Saturday with Ted continues on NEWSTALK 1010.
Thank you, sir. It's Bill King on the keyboards. Ted Woloshyn right here on NEWSTALK 1010. Joining me now to discuss the roller coaster ride that is the stock market, Rubina Ahmed-Haq. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, Ted. Thanks for having me.
Good. My pleasure. Our finance minister, Mr. Flaherty, says that we're pretty stable right now. In fact, we can remain at an even keel during these times of instability. You comfortable with that?
Well, yesterday, that entire event that we saw with Mark Carney and Jim Flaherty addressing really all of Canada and answering MPs' questions, I didn't see any hope in it. I mean, he did make some comments saying that if it needed to happen, he would put more stimulus into the economy. But he just made these sort of broad stroke statements about we will step in when it's necessary and Canada is sort of growing slow and steady. I mean, these are things we already know. I want to know what he's going to do if the United States economy starts to go into a recession. I want to know what he's going to do if European economies start to collapse. Who are we going to trade with? Who are we going to do business with? And what is his preparation in order for businesses here in Canada to continue to flourish through such terrible times?
Are you uncomfortable with the state of affairs down south?
I'm very uncomfortable with it. I do think that the United States is going to be able to fix itself. It's the world's largest economy. Nobody wants the U.S. to fail. So I think that's one thing they have on their side, is that everyone is rooting for them to get back up on their feet. But it's scary because we sit in their backyard. We trade 70% of our goods and services with the United States. If there was an economic crisis where they started cutting back to the point where they stopped buying Canadian goods and services, we would have a huge problem on our hands. So it is uncomfortable seeing that once a country that was so strong and unpenetrable, no one thought you could penetrate it, is now looking at possible taking more debt and possible, some people even saying it could default, all these sort of things being pushed around.
And what about to the situation in Europe? Let's take a look at some of the areas of Europe that have been causes for concern in the last 6 months or so, and I'm thinking specifically Greece.
Well, the problem is that these countries, because of when the euro was established, they're so intertwined because of their currency. So when Greece is going to default, France is very concerned about it because they trade in the same currency as Greece uses. So if they were to default, the euro could be devalued. It could also devalue the French economy, and they have lent so much money to these countries like Greece and Spain and these countries that are having these problems with paying their bills on a month-to-month basis. So it is concerning that, again, Greece is in the news. Again, we're hearing about possible problems in Italy and in Spain and in Ireland. And more than 6 months, almost a year and a half, we've been hearing about problems in Greece. And they haven't been able to really get up onto their feet and start chugging along and moving forward. We're hearing that they're still having problems paying their month-to-month debts. There
are those people who believe that countries such as Greece, for example, should never have accepted the euro.
Yeah, and I have a little bit of a personal story to tell about when I was in Italy, and this was probably 8 or 9 years ago, and the euro was first starting to be used there. And I remember someone there who was an Italian citizen saying they have no respect for that currency. They want the lira back because they don't respect the fact that they have to share this currency with so many people. So I think about that conversation a lot right now, where when the euro was established so many years ago, about 10 years ago, there was a sense of where the countries no longer felt ownership over that currency. And maybe that's what's led to the situation people are in now, because they don't have respect for the money that they did before the euro was established. And it's a huge problem because those countries are, like I said, they're so intertwined. And now they're talking about possibly bringing out a euro bond where they would be able to just connect those countries even more if they did that.
There's a term that I was unfamiliar with up until recently. Perhaps you can explain to people, what is stagflation?
Well, stagflation is when we see low economic growth, but prices continue to rise. And that is really, really scary because the governments usually, when prices are rising, they will raise interest rates so they will bring them down. But if they raise interest rates, that's going to slow the economic progress that we have even more. So what can they do? They don't have any tools that they can use to actually get the economy going and keep prices down. So I think that's the kind of reality we're heading into. If you think about your own situation 3-4 years ago, things cost less, and your economic situation was probably better. Your investments were probably better. Your prospects for jobs were probably better. People weren't as concerned about how much debt they were carrying. But now, more people concerned about debt, less job prospects, and we all know we're paying more for those everyday things like grocery and gas and utilities to run your home. And that's what stagflation is, and it's a really scary reality, and I think that's where we might be heading.
Okay, we're going to take a break. Rubina Ahmed-Haq is with me. When we come back, Rubina, I want to talk to you about what's going on in precious metals.
Okay, cool.
All right, back in a moment. News Talk 1010.
You're listening to Saturday with Ted on News Talk 1010.
Money makes the world go round. It also makes my stomach go round. And if you've been following the markets, you probably understand what I'm talking about. Joining me right now to continue our discussion, Rubina Ahmed-Haq, who is a News Talk 1010's business correspondent. Years ago, when W.C. Fields traveled around performing at various towns, he had this serious distrust of bankers. So wherever he went, he got gold bullion.
Okay.
And he opened up bank accounts right across the United States. But the problem is that he never used his own name. He always used pseudonyms. And down the road, he got to a point where he couldn't remember all the pseudonyms, so he probably left a lot of money behind in gold bullion. People may have thought he was a little odd back then, but in retrospect, boy, was that ever smart buying gold. Just wish you know where you put it, that's all.
Exactly. And right now, at the gold prices that we're seeing of over $1,800 an ounce, we've never seen prices like this. Adjusted to inflation, though, Ted, we're still not at that record high from the 1980s. I think it hit $850 back then, and we'd have to get to about $2,400 to surpass that mark. But still, I mean, gold is seen as still as that traditional safe haven. You can't make more gold, so when people don't know where to put their money and they see that governments are printing more money, then they put their money into gold because they know that it's something that cannot be recreated.
It's referred to as the world's default currency.
Absolutely. And also the U.S. currency is also considered a safe haven currency because it could trade anywhere in the world. But when you lose trust in that, most people go into gold and sort of park their money there until they can really feel comfortable about putting their money back in the market somewhere.
And would it be a wise move to invest in gold at this point, or is it sort of like the train has left the station?
Well, I don't give investment advice, but I do feel like some things, history is really something that you should look at. I mean, if something has been strong for the last 20, 30, 40 years, that it's a good bet that if you want to invest in something. And I always say, if you are investing, look for companies that pay good dividends, that have good history, that have good balance sheets. I mean, these are things that everyone should consider when they're putting their money. Don't try to beat the market. Don't try to be somebody that's going to make a ton of money in 3 or 4 months, because it usually doesn't work out. The stock market, in some ways, is the world's biggest casino, and really, I mean, many of us are not sophisticated enough to understand how it works.
Right, absolutely. I think the banks, do they not release their quarterly results next week?
They do, and Canadian banks, the one thing about them that is so amazing is that they've never cut their dividend. Even throughout the economic crisis, when so many things were going wrong with the United States banks, they didn't cut their dividend. They continued to move forward. The stock prices did come down, and a lot of people got in when stocks were very low and are now seeing their portfolio grow. But it'll be interesting to see how Canada is doing, because we saw this really great surge at end of 2009 all through 2010 and sort of the beginning of 2011, but things have slowed down even in the Canadian economy. It'll be interesting to see how they report in the next couple of weeks.
I thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us this Saturday morning.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. All the best to you.
Okay, take care.
All right, Rubina Ahmed-Haq, News Talk 1010's business correspondent. Of course, the CNE opened yesterday, and that signals 2 weeks' worth of fun, all leading up to 1 day of depression and anxiety for a lot of people. The beginning of school. We'll tackle that subject right after the news at News Talk 1010.